Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. So, today again, we are continuing with the winding up of the company, right? And the provisions for this chapter will be contained in your Companies Act 1956. Okay with it? So, the main topic for today's consideration, for the consideration of today's lecture, would be the statement of affairs of the official liquidator. So far we have seen and we have understood that yes, the court, the high court, right, or the relevant court, whichever is it. It may also be the district court at situations, and you will get it in the previous lectures. You have it over there. So the court will appoint the official liquidator when the order of winding up has been passed, right? Then what happens is the liquidator goes to the company and then continues or takes over the winding up procedures. Correct with it? Are we clear to that till that level? Right? We are at parallels. Now, there's one thing you need to understand in between this process. That okay, the court has appointed the liquidator will go start the process. But how will it do that? Like when you go to a client for the first time, right? If it's a new client for you, for the audit client, what do? You do the preliminary investigation, right? You get the details from the client. You have a you have the engagement letter to be signed. The procedure, you get the knowledge of the industry, you get the knowledge of the client, you do those things, right? That is a preliminary work, because before that, otherwise you are not able to plan your work and not perform it, right? So similarly, don't you think even the liquidator will need it? So for this purpose, what happens is that the director or the manager, the secretary, or the chief officer of the company, any of these people, right, they will communicate with the liquidator. They will keep the liquidator informed about the affairs in the company. What has happened? What is the position of the assets, the liabilities, right? What is the liquidator supposed to do? He has to prepare a plan. He has to prepare a work map, right? So for that, he will need certain information. If he needs to dispose of the assets, he need to know what are the assets of the company, right? So how do they communicate? It is not that okay, you go to the client, you sit, you have a meeting, and then you discuss that okay, yeah, we are going to perform the audit, this is your responsibility, this is our responsibility, let us sign the engagement letter and then we proceed. No, we are not going through these procedures over here, because this is not your client. Understand, the company is not the client for the liquidator. The liquidator has been appointed by the court. It is a legal proceeding that is going on. It's a serious matter, right? So everything has to be formal, it has to be documented, and hence the court requires that a statement of affairs of the statement of affairs of the company is to be sent to the official liquidator. The liquidator will study that statement of affairs as to what is going on in the company, prepare an understanding, right? Prepare a plan based on it, and then go out for the winding up of the company, right? So do you understand what is the statement of affairs that we're talking about? It is the communication that the directors or the managers of the company will make to the liquidator, and whereby they will narrate the entire status of the company as on date, right? The statement of the affairs of the company as on date. Now do you understand the heading? Do you understand the meaning? Right. So we have also had a question on this, right? You had a direct question on this topic in your exam in 2002. That a company was wound up, the official liquidator had to take charge. Please briefly explain the provisions relating to the statement of affairs. You had a direct questions. So whenever such question come, you will have to narrate the entire section. So over here we are dealing with section 454, right? You must have seen a difference between my previous lectures of the other chapters and this chapter, that I am not specifically mentioning the sections over here. There are two basic reasons behind that. I'm not telling you that the sections are not important. If it weren't important, I wouldn't have been discussing it in the class as well, right? But why do I narrate it out and I do not place it on the screen is that very soon these sections will be changing, because the Companies Act 1956 is already outdated, right? So for your examination point of view, yes, if you write the sections, you get marks. But again, you have a number of sections in the winding up chapter, right? Whenever you get a question on the winding up, you understand, okay, we're talking about voluntary winding up, okay, we are talking about compulsory winding up, we are talking about the statement of affairs, oh, we are talking about this, we're talking about that. You will understand what you're talking about, you'll know the provision. But again, mugging up the sections in voluntary winding up, since it's a huge chapter, it becomes a task, right? Plus you will not be able to give the reference to these sections in any other chapter. But when you prepare your directors and stuff, you give the reference to those sections, like for example, the section for the casual vacancy and stuff, 161 and stuff, you know that you will have to make a reference other way also, right? So that is why those sections become important for you. And when we do the other acts like the Competition Act and the Banking Regulation Act, over there also, why do we remember the sections? Is because that is pertaining to that act and it is pervasive. So whenever we have a reference to the act, we refer to those sections. But in the case of winding up, we will not be referring to these sections anywhere else. So if you have the enthusiasm of learning the sections, please get the list downloaded from the internet, right? You'll get the list of all the sections, mug it up, jot it down in the examination. But these sections would be written only in this specific question of winding up, right? So suggested, yeah, if you have time, if you have that energy, go for it. That is a add-on thing. But if not, then please understand these sections are not that important as the other sections. If you are giving time to mug up the sections, it is better to mug up those sections which are important and that can be used other ways also, right? So it is just being a little judicious, being a rational on that end. Agreed? Okay. So for your information, this is section 454, the statement of affair to be made to the official liquidator, right? Now we need to understand, first of all, when is this statement required? Yeah, we know it is submitted to the official liquidator, but when? Right? So this statement of affairs that is prepared by the directors and stuff, they will be sent to the official liquidator in two cases. Because first of all, that is important that the official liquidator is appointed, right? So there are two cases when the official liquidator is appointed. Either the court has made a winding up order, or the court has appointed a provisional liquidator. Right? That means the order has not been made. Wait, let us get back to the scratch now. When you file a petition to the court, right, and then there's a case and the court determines whether or not to order winding up, that proceeding takes some time. Agreed? So at the end, if the court decides that yeah, we will have to wind up the company, then it will appoint an official liquidator for you. At some point of time in between, when the proceeding is still under process and the court thinks that no, the assets can be misappropriated, there can be some risk, right? So for avoiding those unwanted situations, the court may also appoint a provisional liquidator. We have seen this already, right, in the previous lectures. So the crux is that whenever the case is pending with the court, or whenever there is a judgment taken by the court, that means whenever there is a case of compulsory winding up, we will issue the statement of affairs. Because in the case of compulsory winding up, the official liquidator will walk into our office, either as a provisional liquidator or in the capacity of the official liquidator, and hence we will have to offer him the statement of affairs. Now is it clear with you? Remember that these are not the only situation when the official liquidator comes in. The official liquidator also comes into play in the case of voluntary winding up at the end. After the liquidator appointed by the company has done its task, the official liquidator again comes into play to check whether the liquidator who was appointed by the company has performed the task well, right? But in that case, we are not giving him the statement of affairs because he has the complete report of the final liquidator, right? So we will be issuing the statement of affairs only when it is a case of compulsory winding up by the court, and then the court appoints the official liquidator, either in the capacity of the official liquidator or in the capacity of the provisional liquidator. Now I think all round surround it is clear, right? Next, the content of the statement of affairs. So it shall contain the details of the assets, the liabilities, creditors, contributories and other matters. Whereby, if I go on to elaborate it, then the statement of affairs should contain the details of the asset of the company, right? Because the official liquidator wants to know what are the assets, how much can it realize from those assets, what are the cash assets over there, how much is in the bank, do you have any negotiable securities, because these things are readily available to pay off the debts and the liabilities. Apart from these, what are the concrete assets like the fixed assets and stuff, that is a separate issue. You will have to again include all of them, but that will be the general category. But to be very specific, the liquidator is most interested in the cash balance, the cash in hand or in bank, and the negotiable security. So you will be stating those separately along with the other assets, right? Then you will also in that statement of affair include the detail of the debts that the company owes, that the company is liable to pay. right? And also the other liabilities that the company has incurred, because that will help the liquidator to make an estimation. Okay, so there are 17 crore rupees that needs to be paid, and we have 7-8 crores in the bank and the cash, and still we need to raise another 10 crores by realizing assets. Okay, so so this is the planning that the liquidator would get into when it gets the estimation of the total liability that it needs to pay off and the total asset that is available for him, the assets that are readily available and the assets or the cash or the fund that will be available after selling off certain assets, right? Then we'll also include the name, the residence address, the occupation of its creditors, the details of the creditors, right? And over there you will bifurcate that, yeah, these creditors are secured, these creditors are unsecured, or this portion of the liability to this creditor is secured and this portion is unsecured. For example, if the creditor, right, he has the company has to pay, for example, 10 crore rupees to a creditor, right? But against that, the company only has a security of 5 crores. So that creditor becomes semi-secured and semi-unsecured, right? If you have already given an asset, you had an asset with you and you have secured the creditor with that asset. Okay, if nothing happens, I'll give you this asset. But the value of that asset today, as on the date, the fair value in the market is just 5 crores. So that creditor is now secured with 5 crores. Right? So later in the chapter we'll understand that when we are going with the preference of the payment, right, with the preferential settlement, then the secured portion of that individual creditor would come in the first priority, that is overriding the preferential payment, and the unsecured portion will be lying, that is the next 5 crore will be lying at the end. So getting into this detail, we'll talk about this when we go to that portion of the chapter. But now what you need to understand is, yes, the entire detail of the creditors will also be included over there, right? And if there is any secured debt, right, if the debt is secured by any security, then the details in the particular of the security which is given against that debt also needs to be included over there. Getting all it? Then if we talk about the debts which are due to the company, that means the company will receive, that is again kind of an asset, right? Or if you say the contributors are bringing in something, it's almost the same category, right? The contributors are bringing something, the debts that are owed to the company, that means there is inflow of the fund, right? So if there is debt that is due to the company, you will again have to include the name, residence and the occupation of the person from whom that debt is due, the debtors, right? So you will have to incorporate, you'll have to write over there the details of all the creditors and the details of all the debtors, so that the liquidator is sure about whom to make the payment and from whom is the payment supposed to be received, right? And then the last part is you will add such other information as which is prescribed or the official liquidator may require specifically. Will say, no, I need the information about this specific thing as well. Then the director will have to incorporate that information into the statement of affairs, right? So is the chapter clear till that end, right? The two portions, that when are you supposed to issue the statement of affair and what will be the content of the statement of affair, right? The next that we'll talk about it is the statement is verified by the director, officer, secretary or the other capable person. Now over here we are basically talking about who is responsible for preparing the statement and verifying it. It's not just that on the first end you prepare it, it's right, it's wrong, whatever it is, just give it to the liquidator. No, it has to be verified, because the correct statement of affair of the company needs to go to the liquidator, right? If by mistake you include that, okay, we have one asset of 10 crore which is no more available with you, and the liquidator thinks, oh, 10 crore worth asset, overall liability is this much, we are easy to go, the company will have surplus to return back to the contributors. So it will not prepare its mind that, okay, we need the contributors to bring in the call money, to bring in other liabilities and stuff. Getting the point? So you will have to make sure that you give him the specific and the correct information. So the statement of affair that you prepare needs to be also verified, right? So the statement of affair, when you submit it to the liquidator, that shall be submitted and verified by one person who is either the director. He may also include other people like the manager, the secretary of the company, right, or the chief officer of the company, who is the chief officer as on the relevant date. So any of these or all of these, or with whatever odd combination you have, right, those people can be involved together to prepare the statement of affairs, right? So when you have prepared the affair, now you need to show that yes, it has been verified. Now who has prepared, if the same person verifies, then you understand there's a doubt that the liquidator may have. If you go to the client and you say that okay, the maker and checker is the same person, you doubt the reliability, right? You do that. So even the liquidator will doubt the reliability. The debtor prepared it, the debtor verified it, so obviously he didn't check everything while he was verifying it. He was confident about what he did. So he wants that it should be verified by a person who has been an officer of the company, any person who has been an officer of the company. Because if he was the officer of the company, he is aware of the state of affair of the company, right? Or if there is some other person who has been involved in the formation of the company, that means from the very beginning when the company was incorporated, this person has been with the company, so he knows in and out of the company, right? So the person who has been a part of formation. But in this case, you remember that we are talking about only those person who have been a part of the formation of the company at any time within preceding 1 year. That means if the company is incorporated within the past 1 year, then only will involve those people, because there's a possibility, right? The promoters, they promoted the company and they're out of it. Now the company has been running over by some other people, and that person is not aware of anything. So what do we do by taking a verification authorization from that person? We cannot doubt, we cannot we will doubt his reliability, right? We cannot depend on that, right? The third person is the person who is in employment with the company, or if he is not currently in employment, he has been in employment within the preceding 1 year and is in the opinion of the official liquidator capable person, right? That means either the current person who is employed with the company or the person who has been employed within the preceding 1 year, but the liquidator thinks that this person is capable, he knows the in and out of the company. Bro, please come verify it, whether the affairs, the statement of affairs given by the directors and the managers and stuff, all these people, whether is it correct. So if there is any misstatement, if anything goes different, right, from the view of it, you can recognize it and you can intimate it to me. So please verify it. Again, then it's your responsibility also. If I'm relying upon it, it is the responsibility of the creator as well as the checker. Right? Got the point with that? So that is about the verification and the submission of the statement. Next, if we talk about, then you should know that it should be filed within 21 days of the relevant day. Now, what is the relevant date for the first case? So again, you understand one thing. We'll go back to the basics, right? When is the statement of affair issued? When the court appoints the official liquidator, right? So, do you think the relevant date of submission of this statement of affair should at any point of time be before the appointment of liquidator? The answer is no. Because you are issuing this statement of affairs to the official liquidator. So unless and until he is appointed, whom are you going to give it? There are a lot of people who can be the liquidator. So you don't know who will be appointed for your company, right? So once the court makes it clear, once the court either appoints the liquidator, right, or he orders winding up. Now why do I say either appoint or order winding up? Because these are two different situations and you need to understand that. When the court will order the winding up, right, when the court says okay, as per the case, as per the proceeding, we conclude that we will order winding up. So whenever the court issues the winding up order, it always includes the name of the liquidator. Okay, if we are ordering winding up, this is the person who will go to you and who will commence and take ahead the proceedings of the winding up. So whenever the winding up order is given, you know who is the official liquidator. Correct with it? So you go and give it to the official liquidator, right? Now you say, so we don't understand, then why do we give a point about the appointment of the liquidator when we know that okay, if the winding up order is given to us, the liquidator is appointed and he is mentioned in the winding up order. So why do we have the second point of appointment of liquidator? Now my friends, now again you need to understand the different situation, right? So if we go back to the initiation of this lecture, in the first few minutes of the lecture, what did we discuss? That the statement of affairs should be issued, the submission, in two cases: when the court is ordering winding up and the official liquidator is appointed, and the other case is that the winding up order has not been passed and a provisional liquidator is appointed. That means that official liquidator is appointed on a provisional basis. So when you receive the winding up order, at the end you know who is the official liquidator, you issue. But if the winding up order has not been issued so far, but the court has appointed a provisional liquidator, won't you give it to him then? You will, right? Because otherwise, how will he proceed? So that is why we're talking about two cases. Either the provisional liquidator is appointed or the final winding up order has been given, whatever be the case. Whichever is earlier, or you can say. Right? Obviously, if provisional liquidator is appointed in any case, then that will be earlier. If he is not appointed at all, then we have only one option, that is the appointment of the official liquidator with the winding up order. Right? So that is the relevant date. So from that relevant date, from the date of appointment or the date of winding up, you will be given 21 days to prepare, verify and submit the statement of affairs to the official liquidator. Clear with that? But now do you think, if there by any situation, right, some unforeseen circumstances arise and the director was not able to submit in 21 days, what will happen? Oh my god, that's an issue. Is it? No. The court says, okay, it's not a big deal. We are not in a haste to wind up. Do one thing, take 90 days. Or to be specific, we will not use the term 90 days, we'll say 3 months. Right? I'm giving you time for 3 months. Yaar. Come on, if you're not able to do it in 21 days, take 3 months, prepare it very well, get it verified. I want the correct statement. So the court is lenient on that end, because winding up is the last resort and nobody wants winding up. Right? Nobody wants to wind up the company. Right? So are you clear with that point, that it should be filed within 21 days or with an extension within 3 months from the relevant date? Correct with that? Next, creditors or contributories are entitled to inspect. Okay. So the statement of affair, right, that the director is preparing and giving it to the official liquidator. Who is involved? Who are the two parties involved? One is the internal affairs of the company, the directors, the managers and the chief officer, and the other is the liquidator. Verified also by the officer or the people who were involved in the formation of the company. Do you think at any point of time the liquidator or the contributor got an opportunity to get into and see what is the statement of affair? Even they need to be mentally prepared, right? Even they need to plan their action, plan their deeds. So that is why, although there is no mandate to send it to them as well, because whom will you send? You cannot send the statement of affairs to everybody and then again the return to everybody, the auditors report to everybody. No, you cannot do that. So what you do is you send it to the official liquidator and then keep it open for inspection by them. So any of them who are interested, not all of them will be interested. Okay, if it is winding up, I have a very small stake, let us see what will happen. I don't have time to get into it. I have other business to do. Right? And the others who are at stake, they will be interested. I want to look at the statement of affairs. What is going on? What is not? Right? So how do you know? It is the attitude of the person. So what you do is you keep it open for inspection. Whosoever wants can come and inspect it over there, can take the extract, no problem with that. Right? So that is it, that the creditors and the contributors are entitled to inspect the statement of affairs. It is valid, right? It is reasonable. Then the last part is the cost is to be paid by the official liquidator. Oh my god. So the person who is preparing that statement of affair, getting it verified, attaching the affidavit and everything, he has incurred some cost. Right? Why did we prepare the statement of affair? For the liquidator's sake. To make the things convenient for the liquidator. So bro, you will have to bear the expenses. Whatever we have incurred. Whatever is the administrative cost, whatever is the legal expenditure behind the affidavit and stuff, the liquidator will have to reimburse it to the people who have done it. Because we know the chief officer would do it, director would do it, manager would do it. Now they won't go to the company and ask for reimbursement. Company, this is my bill, reimburse it. No, it is not the normal situation now. Liquidator has been appointed, the directors have lost their position, they have lost their power. They may not be entitled to the reimbursement. Right? There can be an issue. So they said, let's make it simple. You are preparing it for the liquidator will reimburse it to you. Don't worry. And if at any point of time the liquidator is not doing so, then you can file an appeal against that in the court. Court, I am not being reimbursed the expenses I have made. I have put in my best efforts, I have put in my money, my resource, my time to prepare the statement of affair, and I am not even getting back the money. Forget about my time and resources. Clear with that? And this statement of affair will also be prepared in the case of voluntary winding up but it is not being submitted to the official liquidator because there is no official liquidator in that case. The official liquidator comes into play at the end, after everything is done, right? So in that case, everywhere, all the provisions that we have where we have related referred to the official liquidator, we will be referring to the liquidator appointed by the creditors or the members, right? We will not approach the court for anything because in voluntary winding up we don't have the interference of the court, and the relevant date in that purpose will also change. The relevant date would be the commencement of winding up, because with that the members or the creditors will appoint the liquidator, right? But otherwise, the statement being prepared, the content of the statement, the creditors and the contributory open to inspection, all these things will be the same, and the cost will also be paid by the liquidator but not the official liquidator. Okay, so is that clear with you? Will you be able to relate it? If not, please put it down in the comment box. I will take a separate class on that and explain it to you if that is missing out on it, right? Otherwise, I don't think it's a necessity to take a separate class on the statement of affairs to the normal liquidator, right? So that will be all for the day today, and we'll take up the other provisions. Like, we'll start with the dissolution of the company and the revival and the members voluntary winding up, creditors voluntary winding up, the differences and the defunct companies. There are a lot of things still pending in winding up. We'll take it up in the later lectures. So until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Stay tuned for the very next lecture. Thank you. Bye bye.